The words seemed to them like nonsense. You know, we're not supposed to be surprised when people think this is crazy. It's as if Luke, who wrote this, says, hey, you guys that were in the story, you all thought it was crazy too. And so we're not supposed to be surprised when people think it's crazy. So you might have friends at school, you might have people in your family even, maybe even living in the same house as you now, that think this is utterly crazy nonsense. But God's not surprised by that. It's kind of normal when people think it's not normal. And if God's not surprised by that, then we shouldn't be surprised by that. It doesn't mean that God's plans are off track. He's still in charge of everything, and we're not to worry. Sometimes we think that the disciples, when we read these stories, were a bit stupid. Hello? I mean, Jesus told them, I don't know how many times, I'm going to die, and on the third day, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to rise. And they kind of just, they hear the words, but they don't get it. And we think, well, they're a bit stupid. You see, it's not that they don't understand the words that come out of Jesus' mouth. And now, you know something of this. See, there's something deeper going on here. You'll know something of this. So maybe I hope that you get a bigger Easter egg than this today. But imagine you get an Easter egg and your parents say to you, now, the Easter egg's for later. We always have it on a Sunday afternoon on Easter Sunday, and not to have it first thing. No, that would be bad. And you say, well, they say, remember my words. You're not to have it. We're going to put it on the side and you can have it later. And you just sort of look past it a few times and you smell it, and then you just couldn't help yourself. And then later on they find you and the chocolate is smeared around your face. And they say, don't you remember? Didn't you remember what we said to you? And you think, well, I kind of remembered, but I didn't want to remember. And that's kind of like what's happened here in this story. The angels, the shiny guys, said to him, don't you remember that Jesus had to die? He must suffer and then rise on the third day? And they didn't want that to be true. So they didn't kind of believe it to be true. And it can be hard for us, as it was hard for them, to believe that Jesus had to die. Now you need to look at my hands to get this. See, there's us and there's Jesus. And it's hard for us to accept that we deserve what happened to Jesus. You see, the Bible talks about it in this way, that we have, human beings, always think that we can make sense of stuff. We always think that we'll do it better than God. So we say, no, don't worry, God, we'll get on with it ourselves. And so we hurt other people. We offend God, or we displease God, and we hurt others and hurt ourselves. And that's what the Bible calls sin. And the Bible says that it weighs down on us, our sin. It would crush us. But God comes in the person of Jesus. He's God, but he's human. He doesn't carry any of the sin, but amazingly, when he goes to the cross, he is crushed instead of us. He takes our sin, and we are free and can be forgiven. Now that's the best news in the world. But it can be hard for us to want to believe that we deserve to be crushed. It can be hard for us to believe that Jesus actually has taken it away so we're free. It can make no sense to us. It's only when Jesus' words were opened to those women, when they remembered his words, that it made sense. And that's what happened later to the other close friends of Jesus, the men and all the others, when they had Jesus' words open to them. What hadn't made sense suddenly did make sense. And it's the same for us today. You see, it's only when Jesus' words are open to us, when what doesn't make sense in the world suddenly does. There's that moment, isn't there, when we know that what we thought wasn't true and we find out that it was, that we kind of go, oh. Maybe it was like your mummy's tummy moment, and we go, oh. And we actually bow our heads. We are humbled. That's what the Bible calls it. And we're humbled at the moment in our world. We thought everything made sense, and it doesn't. And suddenly we realize that nothing makes sense, and Jesus' words are suddenly open to us, that he can defeat death and things can make sense if we'll be open to his words. And that brings us to Peter, who finishes off our story. Did you notice Peter? He's in verse 12. He ran to the tomb. He bent over. He saw the strips of linen lying by themselves. He went away wondering to himself what had happened. You see, Peter's an interesting guy. He was there when the women turned up. He would have been among them all and thought, nonsense, rubbish. But yet, he wasn't completely sure. So he ran to the tomb. He made it a priority, and he bent down and had a good look at all that he could see. And then he went away wondering. You see, Jesus opened later his word to Peter like the others, but Peter was open to Jesus' words this Easter. What about us?